As journalists and television hosts, scripts are our lifeline. Each newscast, each story, it all revolves around a script.
But now it's time to go unscripted. That means we're not just going off script, we're throwing out the script altogether.
Each week, we're joined by fellow Farm Journal hosts and editors to peel back the layers on stories we've shared throughout the week.
Unscripted. It's real, it's raw, it's entertaining, and it's your chance to meet the personalities behind the personalities. I'm Tyne Morgan.
And I'm Clint Griffiths. Welcome to Unscripted.
And look who is back this
That's
week.
right. I feel like that.
Griffiths.
Tyne, I feel like that open is such a high bar. The real and raw and the unscripted part, pretty easy. The entertaining part, I don't know. We'll find out. Although I feel good about this week. I feel good about this week. I've been saving up things to talk about, having been gone for a couple of weeks. So I'm excited to get back to it.
Yeah, real quick, before we get into our guests, how was Ireland?
And I'll tell you what, it was the easiest international travel I've ever done.
Because it was all planned for you?
One, it was all planned for me, but it's just an easy country to visit. So I went, just so people know, I went with my son and we went to Ireland for an agricultural tour. It was part of his FFA class. Anyway, so I went as a chaperone. And there were about 50 of us. There was a group from Nebraska. There was a group from Colorado, and then our group from Indiana. But I'll tell you, it's my first time to Ireland. It's just, it was an easy flight. Other than the fact they drive on the other side of the road, everything else was just easy. The food's good. It's like normal, and it's not a weird, palate. And so everything was just, and it does live up to the name. They're very green. Very pretty, just a really great visit.
Real quick, one burning question. Do you have to do a background check in order to qualify to be a chaperone?
Yes, you do, and that's okay. I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Pass with flying colors.
Well, I passed.
You know
about the flying colors.
Another individual that would pass with flying colors is our guest this week, known as the King of Crop Tour.
Oh, that's right.
The amount of hours and time that this guy is going to put in next week in order to, come up with those final numbers that you will see on Friday. Let's bring in our guest, the King of Crop Tour, Brian Grete.
Brian, hey, what's going on? Thanks for joining us here on Unscripted. Do you have a favorite destination, favorite place you've ever been, easiest trip, best trip you've ever taken?
Oh, no, I don't. I'm not a huge travel guy, to be honest with you. I like sporting events.
Burn you out doing crop tour every year, so you're like, I'm done traveling after thousands
we
and
do
thousands of miles.
We do a lot of stuff around sporting events, and my kids are active in sports, and so pretty much 12 months a year we are participating in something. So
I feel that for sure.
I don't know. I really like Hawaii. That's where my wife and I went on our honeymoon and been there several times. Mexico's relaxing. Playing around by the poolside or beachside, having an adult beverage or six or so.
Brian, light bulb moment here. Let's add a crop tour in the winter in Hawaii.
There we go. There we go.
They do seed corn. They grow.
That's what I mean. We need to know how
year-round.
the seed corn production is. They even use football lights in order to get 3 crops of soybeans. We need to go to Hawaii in the winter for Pro Farmer Crop Tour Winter Edition. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
See, she's always thinking.
I'll start selling it.
Always thinking.
Brian, we're going to get into a lot this week. We'll get into talking tea and some of these things. But, Crop Tour this year, there's a lot of eyes on Crop Tour every single year. Last year, there were definitely a lot of eyes on Crop Tour, Brian, just because we were going through that drought. There was a lot of concerns about the crop. Everyone wanted to see what the scouts would find. This year, the mood isn't great, Brian. Let's be honest. When you look at the commodity prices this week, it just continues to, we've seen a bloodbath earlier this week in the commodity markets, and the moods aren't great. But each year, it doesn't matter what the commodity prices are. You have a very important job on Crop Tour, and I know you take that seriously with Pro Farmer.
Absolutely. So third full week of August, every single year we go out in the 7 states from Ohio on the eastern side, all the way to South Dakota and Nebraska on the western side, and everything in between. So we will cover literally tens of thousands of miles between all the scouts, and sample probably 1,600 plus corn and soybean fields each. And it's the first real look at the crop, because USDA's August estimate, as of a couple of years ago, removed the objective yield surveys. And so they don't go out and pull field samples any longer in August. They base those mostly on farmer surveys, now FSA certified data, satellite imagery, those types of things for their August estimate. So we're the first real hands-on look at corn and soybeans across the bulk of the Midwest.
Brian, I think we should, Tyne, let's get into talking tea, and then I think we'll show maybe a shot of some of those early scouts here in August. Let's talk some tea here.
You know what it means to spill the tea. That is exactly that. So before we get into crop tour, I think the biggest thing that everyone's talking about is this monster crop that USDA printed on Monday in the USDA report. And Zach, you can pull up let's pull up the first graphic that shows the yield. I mean, right, we knew it was a big crop out there. I mean, a lot of farmers have said, listen, it's almost been like greenhouse growing weather. We've had enough rain. We've had just enough heat. Things are looking good. But did these numbers surprise you?
Actually, the corn number came in a little bit lighter than what our pre-report estimate was.
Seriously?
We're at 184.
Holy cow. Based
on crop conditions and how they line up historically. And so that was the top of the guesstimate ranges. And that's kind of where all the signs pointed to us ahead of the report. Soybeans, we were at 53, so they came in just a little bit above us, and so no real surprises from our angle based on the crop condition ratings. Now, USDA's crop condition ratings are subjective, but there's a history there, and you lose some of the subjectivity because of the historical perspective there, and just crops have had very little stress this year. Now we know about the flooding in the northwestern corn belt and all that. That's going to take away some harvested acres, but yield wise on what's out there is very strong.
Well, it does. This is when you start to drive around the country, and I've traveled in July. I traveled from Oklahoma all the way back up to Indiana. I've been to Ohio this summer. I'm telling you, like, it just looks pretty good, and we don't have that drought stress. I mean, last year, what were we looking at, Brian? Like 40% of the corn and soybean crops in some sort of drought or dryness. And so, like, we aren't seeing that stress this year. So, it kind of begs the question, what's the top here?
Yeah, well, the talk is that we got big crops, and we'll see if we find that next week on crop tour. Record yields, record corn yield, record soybean yield in the first forecast. Now, USDA, how they line up historically, just because they forecast a big crop in August doesn't mean that it's going to end up that way. The signs point in that direction at the moment, but we still have to finish off these corn and soybean crops. And, when you look back historically,
this is what the internet says USDA is finding out there. But I'm telling you, they're going to change the header for Pro Farmer Crop Tour next week. We know that.
Yeah, historically, it's about a 50-50 toss up in terms of whether USDA goes up or down on both corn and soybeans from August forward. And so, I mean, the numbers are amazingly neutral moving forward from August. And so we'll see, like I said, if the crop lives up to expectations and how it finishes.
Zach, pull that image back up real quick. Is that Chip?
Stop. Oh my gosh. He's not even here to defend himself.
We already texted about this. I told him that somebody said this was Chip from last year. I asked Chip if he got Botox because I feel like he looks better than this photo. He said he's very against Botox. So for the record, Chip is anti that. He's not even, now that he does TV all the time, he's not even going to do it. Anyway, but there are some areas of stress out there. Brian, we saw on the USDA report, like looking at the corn yield, and I'm pulling up the state by state breakdown because we'll get into the areas that are really good here in a second. But we did see like North Carolina, that yield down 32% from last year, Pennsylvania down 14%, Texas down 4%, Ohio down 5%. I mean, we know that there are pockets of drought out that are impacting the crop. But yet you see some of these states that are actually increased, that USDA thinks yields have increased this year. Illinois up 9.2% from last year, 225. Brian, if Illinois can hit 225 bushels per acre as a statewide yield, how impressive is that?
Oh, extremely. Just would absolutely blow the current record out of the water. And so we need to find really big yields coming out of Illinois. Now, Crop Tour doesn't go in the southern, roughly third of the state in Illinois, but what we've seen historically is when Illinois has its really big crops, the record crops or close to record crops, that southern third doesn't pull down. It either is neutral or it helps. And to get to 225, I think that southern third of Illinois is probably going to have to help some. There's not ideal conditions out there across all the state, but the state as a whole is rated really high and obviously has big yield potential. Farmers told USDA that as of August 1.
Tyne, Brian, looking at Ohio, I was surprised by Ohio. Of course, last year was a good crop for that state. Pretty good size yields there, but USDA is expecting a smaller crop in Ohio. What's behind their
they've had
there?
drought, right, Brian? We've seen some of that.
We've seen drought.
It's because we all know on social media, if the crop's bad, farmers are going to post about it, right? And it's been pretty quiet, except in areas like Kansas that have struggled in some of those areas in Ohio. I've seen quite a few farmers in Ohio, Brian, talk about the drought and the impact. They did have some recent rains. Maybe that has soybeans, but do you think the corn crop's already made? You think it's done?
Well, I'm going to tell you about Ohio because last year during Crop Tour, I told you that Ohio was the single most impressive state, the corn crop there that I saw. And at the time I said, that doesn't mean it's going to out yield Indiana and Illinois and Iowa. And it didn't, but Ohio's corn crop last year was impressive. Very impressive. Ohio historically has been kind of a hit and miss state. Whether they get the weather, last year they had weather and it was really impressive. So to see them USDA come with a lower estimate isn't surprising at all out of Ohio because you're comparing it to the gold standard, so to speak, for the state. And so they should back down some. And they haven't had nearly the growing conditions they have this year. But the number that USDA put on it as of August 1 is still an impressive figure. So it's not like we have a crop disaster in Ohio. We just have some pockets that aren't as good as what they could be or what they were last year for sure.
Yeah, USDA has a 188 this year. Last year was 198. So a 10 bushel per acre difference. Brian, how many years have you been on Crop Tour? How many years have you done this?
Oh, I lose track of time and kind of my days and years kind of meld together, but it's like 16, 17 years, probably somewhere in that range that I've been actively going on it. I used to do the data back in the office before I was out leading Crop Tour. And so all 28 years of my working career, I've been actively involved in Crop Tour in different capacities, but leading the Eastern leg is somewhere in that 16, 17, 18 year range.
Well, so that was my point of asking that. So let's say it's 18 years. For 18 years, you've traveled across Ohio. You've seen how far some of these yields have come. You've seen some of those years that were ugly. You've seen last year, which you say that was kind of the golden year for Ohio. You will start off in Ohio this year, just like every year. That's what people have to understand. The routes are the same year in and year out, but the fields that farmers or that the scouts stop in are random. You don't go into any year with expectations, but what are you looking for as you kick things off Monday in Ohio?
Yeah, we don't want to have any preconceived notions going into Crop Tour, but with that said, it's impossible to ignore all the data that's out there, and the crop condition ratings tell us that it's a very good crop. USDA's August estimate tells us that it's a strong crop, and honestly, I could care less what USDA puts on it for a yield. What we want to do during crop tour is ground truth and find out for ourselves what's actually out there. Now, um, there's a difference between crop tour, which is Monday through Thursday, and the pro farmer estimates, which will come out next Friday.
Mm.
The crop tour is raw data. We go into fields, pull samples, and it's data out of the field. So that's Monday through Thursday. On Friday, we take into account the crop tour data along with all the areas that we don't sample from because we're in 7 states. So, there's more states that we don't sample from than we do, although we're in the heaviest producing states. But we take into account all those other areas. We take into account what we know from farmers in those other states and those types of things. We make adjustments and make adjustments for acreage in some years and weather factors and all the other stuff and connect with farmer estimates. And that's what's different. The number that you see in crop tour out of Ohio is probably almost assuredly going to be different than the yield that the farmer puts on it at the end of the week on Friday. And honestly, we know where we want to get to from a production standpoint after we have all the crop tour data and all the other factors figured in, and then we kind of back into it from the state level. So a lot of times, we get nasty grams from farmers saying, "Oh, the state won't do that, or it'll do better than that." I really couldn't care less what the number we put on each individual state. It's total production that we're trying to hit from a national level with the pro farmer estimates.
Were you interested or what did you think of the USDA harvested area number? Because it's below what we've harvested for sure last year. I think it was 82 million acres versus 86 or 86.7 million acres. Brian, I feel like that kind of adjusts or at least tempers a little bit of the size of this crop. I mean, if we were harvesting 86 million acres, it'd be a different story, right?
Yeah, it does to some degree. I think the interesting thing with the acreage numbers that came out from USDA is that they took it off of planted acreage, the bulk of it. The harvested acreage number basically was down the same amount as the planted. So we went from 91.2% projected in July of a harvested acreage percentage to 91.1%. So just down a tenth of a point. So they didn't take off a whole lot of harvested acreage. We could see that number creep down some. And actually, going into the report, we anticipated that harvested acreage percentage would be 90.6. So it came in 0.5% above what we anticipated at Pro Farmer.
Well, it is interesting. And I know, Brian, every year, you go out here, you hit the fields, you look at there's a whole system for how you even go into a field, which ears you count, which rows you get to, like where you stop and how you stop. And that's just raw data. But every year you get feedback from people of like, hey, you're cherry picking here, or you're not cherry picking here, and you should be in this place and you should be in that place. And it's just one of those things that I know you do a great job of answering those every night, Brian, because in a year like this where prices are down and people have a lot in storage, their emotions are pretty raw. And I don't think that falls on deaf ears here. Like, we all recognize that. It's just part of the process of trying to figure out in August, where are we at? Can we give ourselves at least some sort of guess of what's out there?
Absolutely. It's organized in the fact that we hand out maps with predetermined routes. We tell our scouts to stop about every 15 miles for a sample along that route, but randomly. And we don't pick the best fields. We don't pick the worst fields. We have no interest in even caring what the field looks like, to be honest with you, when we stop. We just want the sample from that field. And honestly, we come out of the field and let's say we pull a 200 bushel yield out of that particular field. I don't even really care about that, to be honest with you. What I care about is at the end of the week, all 16 to 1,700 samples that we pull from Ohio to South Dakota and Nebraska and everywhere in between, our best number is always the average of all those samples. So, we might hit a sweet spot in a field. We might hit a really poor spot in a field. We might hit the best field around. We might hit the worst field around. That's why I'm not worried about the individual number coming out of any one single field. I'm interested in what all 1,700 of the samples tell me about the corn crop across the Corn Belt.
As a scout, it's hard to not get jaded because you go into a field and you see one thing, but you have to remember you are just one scout, just one route. On how many routes do you have out of each stop?
So there's 11 routes in the east and 10 routes in the west.
Okay.
So we have 21 routes that spread out, and that's 4 days worth of pulling samples from there. And that's how we get to those roughly 1,700 corn samples and soybean samples that we pull. Now the corn samples, we produce a yield estimate out of that. Soybeans, we don't. We count pods in a 3 foot by 3 foot square because there's a different yield factor for each one of the 7 states. So every time we cross the state line, we would have to change our yield formula. And honestly, on an actual working, moving tour that's very much live and in real time, that would be too much to ask of myself and Chip and the scouts out there.
We are 2 to 3 weeks away from harvest here. By the way, as I was driving in this morning, it is crazy to see how mature this corn crop is, and it's drying down quickly. We'd kind of been stressed because we hadn't had rain, but it's crazy to see how quickly this crop is mature. Do you expect to measure a mature crop next week on Crop Tour, just based on where we are in crop progress numbers?
Yeah, some of the crop we will, and some will. It'll be either average to a little bit behind average because we did have some planting delays, and so there will be a wide variance in terms of crop maturity and what we see. Now, full disclosure, the Pro Farmer yield estimate formula works better when we have a very mature crop. So if we are going right ahead of the combine, have great results with that. The less mature it is, the more it struggles to get it accurate. And so that will be some of the discussion that we have next Thursday night behind closed doors before we put together the Pro Farmer estimates, is crop maturity, where it stands, how we think we need to adjust because of that, whether it's highly mature or lacking maturity. Overall, do we feel like it's an average mature crop, above average, below average, or ahead of average, behind average, I guess would be the way to say that. So all that comes into play when we put together the Pro Farmer estimates.
Brian, one thing you make this point every year, and I really think it's an important one, is that you're measuring a crop, or at least looking at a crop, taking samples at one point in time. I mean, this isn't and not everybody is ready for harvest, and some crops have a long ways to go, and things can change between here and whenever harvest happens. But you're looking at one point in time, so it's a lot of the conversation is around potential, not necessarily baked in, factored in 100% yield.
Absolutely. It is what it is. It's a snapshot during the 3rd week of August, and raw data coming out of fields, raw data going into spreadsheets and giving us a crop tour number, and then that raw data and crop tour data in combination with everything else that goes into the Pro Farmer estimates.
Brian, I will never forget last year, because was it officially the hottest crop tour on record?
It was pretty warm. We were pumping water. We were making sure the scouts had plenty of water when they left the hotel every morning, just because there's been some warm ones over the years. But I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have it be hot than get rained on, because once you get wet, you don't get dry. And they put an air conditioner in my vehicle. They don't put a
hair dryer.
Yeah,
they don't put a hand dryer.
Yeah, and so wet clothes all day in and out of a vehicle. Sitting in that's raw. I mean that yuck. We may get wet this year, unfortunately. Good for the crops, bad for crop scouts. I've said that many times over the years. The heat, it's rough when you're in the fields, but then you get to cool off, and you get 15 miles in between stops to get cooled down. So you get cooled down just in time to get back out in it again. Now, late in the afternoons when you're making those final few stops, it can be rough. But I guess I don't mind the heat as much as I do getting the really, really heavy rain years where it's just pounding rain. that
Yeah.
is a
Brutal.
drain. It's
Yeah.
hard to get out of the vehicle every single time. And by out of the vehicle, I'm talking about most scouting teams make somewhere between 14 and 18 stops per day.
Yeah, yeah. Zach, pull up last year's numbers, if we could take a look at those real quick, just to give us an idea of where we kind of finished with our estimates last year. And these are the Pro Farmer estimates. Walk us through these, Brian.
Yeah. So we attempt to do the best job we can at guesstimating when where we'll finish up. We were light. We were on the light side last year. The corn crop ended up at a record yield of 177.3. So it finished much better than we anticipated it would. Tyne mentioned the extreme heat last year, and that went into our discussion. And quite honestly, it didn't have the type of impact that we thought it would. And so we were light on the corn number last year. A couple of years ago, we nailed corn and soybeans, absolutely nailed both of them. And, probably never happen again, to be honest with you, because it's really hard to put estimates on crops, especially in the third week of August, and especially with soybeans at that stage, because the weather can have such a major impact. But we were light on the soybean side of things last year as well. It is what it is. Couple of the years we've gotten it exactly right. We hit the 2012 corn yield exactly during crop tour. But I mentioned, our formula works a lot better in mature years. In 2012, the drought year, we were sampling as combines were going through fields.
Yeah.
So
I'll never forget
I
that.
remember that.
yeah, I mean, it makes sense when we nailed the number that year. So it is what it is, right? We have the historical years. This will be 32 years. So we have 31 years of history to fall back on and look back on and compare to and all that stuff for the crop tour data.
Brian, I'll never forget 2012, but I'll never forget last year either, because the fact when we were going through Iowa on the last day of crop tour, we had that question, is it drying down or is it dying down? And you even said from the time you left your house in Iowa on that Sunday to the time you toured those fields on Thursday, the crop, it was a night and day difference, but it seemed like that corn crop was already made. Soybeans were in question, but man, I will never forget just watching that crop dry down before our eyes.
Yeah, it was actually stark. I leave on Saturday to head out to break up the drive. And from the point I left on Saturday around midday to the point that I got back on Thursday morning, night and day difference in terms of how the crop looked. And, Clinton, I think you made a really good point there that a lot of that crop had already been made. It put in the work ahead of time. And as a result, it didn't have as much impact. And like I said, we ended up with a record yield last year, 177.3.
I love that you're talking about the years that you'll remember, Tyne, because the year that I remember, Brian, is the derecho year where you were sampling fields, walking through just flattened corn, and you can see it goosenecking, trying to come up and recover, and it's just not going to recover. But that video and those images have stuck with me. Unbelievable some of the things that the scouts and you have come across through the years as far as conditions for the crop.
Yeah, from my perspective, that was a rough year for several reasons. Scouting wasn't real fun that year because we asked the scouts to go out into the fields, pass the end rows, and then another 35 paces in. Then we measure out two 30-foot rows of sections of corn rows adjacent to each other. A lot of those fields that we were in that year were flat. And so we asked them to do the same process and stand the plants back up. That year, we also asked them to determine whether they thought that there was going to be any harvestable area from that field and that type of thing and take in. So there was a complete another variable, but the human side of it too. We had a very good crop that year in 2020 and just a horrific event. And the other stark thing that year was you would see cornfields that were absolutely flattened. It smelled like silage, and silage is one of the great smells in the world. but not when you're in a field that should be harvested for grain in the third week of August. So, but you would see corn flat and the soybean field absolutely right next to it or across the road or whatever the case may be, just direct relationship, showed absolutely no signs of something or anything. And it was just stark. It's one of those images that will never leave my mind.
Unbelievable.
I got an idea for a new Bed Bath & Beyond candle.
Silage. Silage candle.
You probably sell a lot in farm country. I can tell you.
Sell at least one, Brian Grete, apparently. All right, let's get to our next segment.
We do an alfalfa hayfield candle because I think that'd be a good one too.
That would be a good one.
Maybe the rain is coming candle for the desert.
Yeah, rain is coming or rainy soil, that fresh rain soil.
Oh, I love that. See, this is America right here.
Yeah. All kinds of ideas.
$1 billion idea. Make sure we get our cut here on Unscripted. I'm just saying.
Well, if we get fired from this job, we'll just make new candles, sent suggestions that I can't. Have you guys ever been into Bath and Body Works, Brian and Clinton?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a no on that.
Truthfully, or are you just trying to hide it?
No,
are you a closet fan?
I'm pretty sure I've only gone in there to find somebody. That's the
I can see maybe you going in some, but Brian, I can imagine you never step foot in there. You have two boys.
Yeah.
I don't go in those, but I will admit, Bed Bath & Beyond, I buy coffee from there, and I'm not sure. Are they still in? Are they still in business? I think they might have.
I didn't even know they sold. Well, wait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They got all kinds of.
I guess
you mentioned two different things. You mentioned that the one that has
Bath and Body Works. That's different.
Yeah. No, not that one. The Bed Bath & Beyond, I used to online buy my coffee because they sold them in 96, these big, huge 96 boxes for my K-Cups. And I'm avid. It takes a lot of caffeine to have me do my job every single day, the hours that I put in. So I pump coffee, basically via IV almost, but best coffee prices anywhere, and you could get large quantity boxes.
There we go.
Does your coffee intake go up during crop tour week or stay the same?
I don't think it goes up. It's probably the same, to be honest.
It's steady.
A quirky thing about me, and I hate hot things. I don't like hot food. I don't like hot coffee. I drink iced coffee, so I brew it in the hotel room the night when I get in that and put it in the refrigerator, and it's cold for me in the morning when I go. And then
that is day-old coffee. That's disgusting.
Well, so understand me here, though. You got to sip hot things, right? I'm not a sipper.
You're a chugger.
Yes. So it's a shot. It's an 8-ounce shot of instantaneous caffeine that goes.
Or like 32 ounces, Brian.
Yeah. No, I'm not stopping at one. I typically drink about 4 cups of coffee in the morning, but they are chugs.
So you view drinking coffee as a sprint, not a marathon.
Absolutely.
It's a sprint. Get it in me as fast as it's the coffee IV for Brian Grete every day.
It hits you. Ready to go.
This should not surprise me at all.
Have you ever tried to follow him on a morning crop tour? Jiminy Christmas, he's got a lead foot. He's gone. And then you got to really stay on your game to stick with him.
And then you follow that up with the Diet Mountain Dew, and we're good to go.
Okay, this leads perfectly into our next segment.
Yes.
What's the Sigma? How old are your kids, Brian?
19 and 16.
I did not know you had a 19-year-old. Okay, do they use the phrase "what the Sigma"?
No.
Not that you know of, or they just don't.
You need to bust it out for them.
I would have to really think, because I tried not to, the lingo that they use is honestly stupid. But so I try to let some of that just go over my head.
Yeah.
But low key, I don't even know what low key is. I know what low is, and I know what a key is, but I don't know what low key is. But low key is like this thing. Everything's low key. Low key.
Low key, you have no idea what you're talking about?
I have low key no idea. So I don't even know if I used it properly, but I
think you did, actually.
Okay.
We may have a new segment here on Unscripted. Okay, what the Sigma, the craziest headline that you've read or written this week.
It's kind of like what the heck.
Yeah, it is what the heck. And there's a lot of what the heck that I've seen. But is there anything crazy that you've seen this week that you wanna point out, Brian?
Oh, I'll relate it to Crop Tour since that's what we're talking about. But you'd mentioned that the fields and we only pick the good fields. That typically comes from farmers. They think that we're out there cherry picking. The industry side of things thinks that we only pick the poor fields, and nothing could be further from the truth. Honestly, I mentioned it before. I really don't care what the field looks like. And honestly, sometimes the best looking fields when you get out in them are the worst yielding. And sometimes the worst looking fields are the best yielding. And so don't judge a book by its cover, I guess. And I really don't care what the cover looks like.
Maybe we need to start a trend on this Crop Tour, and it's we post every catfish field that we see. You know what catfishing is, Brian?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah. So if a field looks really, really bad, but you get into it and it's actually really, really good, I feel like we could start a trend. We could have a whole
catfish fields.
Catfish fields.
Well, vice versa though, Tyne. Vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa.
It looked really, really good, but it's just nothing out there. Yeah. It didn't pollinate. Looks like a bag of popcorn.
Yeah, we're probably not going to see a whole lot of those this year. Just based on, yeah.
Hey, so my what the Sigma, and I'm going to go right to that, Brian, is a 225 for Illinois as a statewide average from USDA this week. That's my what the Sigma moment. And I think for me, Brian, it's the fact that it's not that it's 225 because we know farmers can grow 225 bushel corn. It's the fact that it's the statewide average, which means there has to be fields way above that to be able to compensate for the fields that are 175. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So one of the things during Crop Tour, it's educational because we do have scouts that come that maybe have never been into a corn or soybean field before. And that's fine because all we're doing is gathering data, but we also want to educate during the week. And so in the case of Illinois, 225, that's monster. I mean, absolutely monster. 214 is their current record. So not only beating, but just blowing it out of the water. When we go through Illinois, we better be pulling. We pull 3 years from one of the rows that we sample, and 5, 8, and 11, and that's part of the formula. Every single field we're in, we better be pulling baseball bats out of those fields because, and by baseball bats I mean you pull the ear and it's girthy, it's long, and it's heavy. And that's one of my favorite teaching moments on Crop Tour is to take the 3 years and hand them to one of the scouts that maybe is less experienced and say, feel these. And then you get to it and maybe they're light. They're long, but they're lighter. And then you get to those fields that are baseball bats. And you go, now compare them to, what you saw before to this. And they're like, oh my gosh, those are heavy ears. And yes, we probably will find or should find or better find, however you state it, those big, long, girthy, heavy ears in Illinois. And not just Illinois, across the central corn belt. So record yields predicted in Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and Nebraska. And we're at all those states. South Dakota, I think, is in there as well. So 5 of the 7 Crop Tour states are predicted to have a record yield this year. Ohio being the exception. We talked about that earlier. And Minnesota. And we know about some of those issues, especially in the southern part of Minnesota, which is the highest yielding area of the state.
I think I found a new drinking game next week. Every time you say girthy, I'm drinking.
You wait, because I know you're with me. You wait.
So
we start a bingo card.
I'm going to say turkey like my boys say low key. I think that's going to be my goal. Everything's going to be girthy, just so I can see you drink.
My TMI, I don't really drink that much. My TMI happened a few years ago on crop tour. Okay. And I just want everybody to know this, Clinton. You know this story. Of course, Brian knows this story because it happened.
It's a great story.
So Brian
This is
and
one of my all-time great, and there are some really good crop tour stories. that is one offshoot of the week, is that extreme storytelling can come out of this. But this is one of my all-time, because I know what you're going to say.
yeah, well, I think your comeback is what makes it so funny. So Brian and I are on stage together every night. Okay. And so for us, I mean, we joke around, give each other a hard time. That's what you're supposed to do. Make it fun. I mean, people are there for, of course, the numbers, but they want to be entertained as well. And so I have a great time with Brian. Well, I did not realize that apparently we have really good chemistry, because when we got off stage, that I had gone back to my room to work like a good employee. And Brian was down talking to some of the scouts, and one of them from Brazil came up to him and said, "Hey, Brian, where's your wife?" And Brian's like, my wife is in Iowa at home. I'm not sure what you're talking about. And he's like, "No, your wife." And finally, Brian figures it out that the scout from Brazil thinks that I am his wife. And Brian, what did you say? What was your response?
I said, "Oh, hell no."
And then you said, you remember what you said next?
No, I don't. I
can do better than that.
Oh,
That's
yes,
what you said.
yeah, I did better than that, I think.
I did better than that.
Yeah. No, Tyne
I
and
love that. That's a highlight, Tyne.
that is one of the, and we joke around with each other, happy anniversary every year, because we apparently are married in our work lives. But that is one of the all-time great stories from crop tour. That
I'm just letting you know that James would give me away, so he would definitely.
Just say it. Yeah. Just say. All right, Tyne. We're at 40 minutes here. Let's get our next TMI. Can't believe this happened. Now I feel like being the a crop tour scout could actually be an Olympic sport. I don't know if Tyne, you or Brian watched the Olympics this last week.
Every night.
I mean, always entertaining. It's one of my favorite things to do, favorite things to see. But I think this moment was my TMI. I can't believe this actually happened. A moment from the Olympics this year, and it's the breakdancing Australian. And I caught this live. I don't know.
You did?
I caught it live.
I didn't catch it live.
The channels, and I see this happen, and I thought, there is no way that should be an Olympic sport. Mm-hmm. And I think this routine actually ended breakdancing in the Olympics. Let's see if Zach can pull that up, because it's just too funny.
But as it should have. I mean, this routine should have ended. This is a talent. Yes, it's a talent, but an Olympic talent? Like, how is that even?
I don't know. Some of the guys I thought was really impressive. I thought it was really cool.
There were some that were really impressive.
Yes, but this young lady's routine, I was just like, this looks like me in college. Like, pretty much what this is every weekend at the tumbleweed.
Listen,
I'm just
if
saying.
you dance like that in college, then I do not feel sorry for you. Is she that young? Because this is like, I mean, no offense, Brian and Clinton, but this is like a dad dance, like something you would do to embarrass your daughters.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I have done this.
Someone said that she is she may be like she teaches spring, like she's a professor, maybe.
I don't know what we're learning here.
But the latest is
Was that the sprinkler? I think that was the sprinkler.
That is awful. I don't understand. I mean, she should have. Got made fun of all over. Still getting made fun of, obviously, and she deserved to get made fun of. Like, why would you do this on a world stage? This is not Olympic material, Brian. I think you said that maybe now there's a scandal going on with this.
Yeah, I heard there's some corruption there, but I'm watching this. I'm far from an Olympic athlete. And I mean, light years away. Right. And I could do this. I mean, I could replicate that pretty closely, probably, especially if I had a couple beverages in me. I mean, that's like, you get the liquid courage, and then you can do stuff like this.
Crop tour dance off.
If she did this without liquid courage, props, because that was awful.
Anyway, that was my team. I can't believe this happened. There were some great moments from the Olympics. I really enjoyed it. Of course, all of a sudden we're all, very patriotic and, just pointing our fingers at other countries. But it was a pretty fun thing to watch this year, and that was the one that stuck out to me the most. I don't know if you guys have any. Can't believe that happened this week.
We loved the Olympics every night. I mean, the girls, even if they were upstairs in bed and they were replaying some of the Olympics, like if it was a race that I knew was going to be close, I would, and they had already gone to bed, I'd call them down. And even when it wasn't live, we were cheering them on, like just especially track and field and those like 100 meter or 200 meter, that were so close. We had so much fun. We don't typically watch a lot of TV, which is really bad job security. And I know I shouldn't say that, but we don't. But for the Olympics, we got in the habit of every night we were home turning it on. Absolutely loved it. Brian, did you guys watch much of the Olympics, or were the boys out playing ball?
God, you bet we did. We're as competitive as any family in the face of the earth, but very patriotic, USA all the way, type of stuff. But some of the mainstream sports that we watch all the time, honestly, I watch the least of that. I like, some of those that you can't see, like handball, water polo,
Seriously?
Yeah, love that stuff because I mean, like those people have once every 4 years they get spotlight.
That's true.
The basketball team, heck, they go out there and beat the heck out of everybody all day long, constantly and stuff like that. So I like those sports that don't get as much exposure because I don't get to see them. And so it's something fresh and something new. And honestly, I don't want to watch a bunch of NBA basketball players play against another team NBA basketball players. I don't watch NBA to begin with because
we don't either.
It's not a great product. But why would I watch it during the Olympics other than, I'm interested in the U.S. getting a gold medal. But those other sports, I mean, these are regular people that do regular jobs on most of the time, and then every 4 years they come out and they get to compete on the world stage, and so I love stuff.
You hear the story about the young woman who won. I think she won the road race, a women's biking road race, and she just started. She never biked before. Took a couple of thoughts. Oh, I'll take some lessons and ride through Central Park while she was working there in New York City, and then fell in love with it. Next thing you know, like 7 or 8 years later, she's in the Olympics winning the race.
And she wasn't even supposed to be in that race, right? Wasn't it another? I mean, I think there was another race that she was supposed to be in, but talk about the unexpected. There were a few of those.
Yeah.
I do too.
That's the best part of the Olympics.
Yeah, I love them too. No, we had a blast watching the Olympics. And I told the girls last night, I said, I'm sad it's over. I turned on the TV because we got in that habit and the Olympics weren't on, and I was bummed that it was over. It was a good Olympics. USA dominated as they should. Brian, you guys are Hawkeye fans, right?
So yeah.
Are you both?
I grew up a Hawkeye fan.
You did?
In the shadows of Iowa City. So yeah. Northern Iowa is where I went to college, and so I have a strong affection for that. But Iowa State, I cheer for. I'm very loyal, so I am loyal to the state of Iowa.
But what about Caitlin Clark when she got snubbed and did not?
Absolutely.
Were you ticked?
Yeah, so I don't care one way or the other, to be honest with you, but that's catty. The stuff that's going on there is just catty. I don't
That's
like
a good way to
stuff.
put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they beat the Olympic team in that when it was at wasn't it the WNBA All-Stars versus the Olympic team and the WNBA All-Stars won? Yeah. I was like, oh yes.
I will tell you about Caitlin Clark. So obviously we've been exposed a lot here in the state of Iowa,
right?
Way before the rest of the country and the world was. So we've known. I've known about her since she was in high school. I mean, she hung out 30-some, 40-some points on our high school girls team years ago. But that girl can play, and she's a transcender, and she transcending athlete, and not just an athlete. Like she is known around the world, and that's the thing. She's like the Beatles in sports. She's like the Fab Five. Michael Jordan, where when she walks into a room or a setting, she's the most important person there.
Interesting.
And, it's It's phenomenal. We don't know what we're witnessing.
No.
She has brought WNBA basketball to the forefront. People are they're selling out arenas and people are watching. I'll be honest with you. I'd never watched a WNBA basketball game before this year. And, she's the sole reason that people are going to the games and watching it. And they're trying to say, oh, so-and-so this and so. No, it's one reason only. And that's just pure analysis and raw facts about what's going on. And everybody else wants to come up with all these other things and they're just wrong. It's all right if they want to be wrong, but you don't have, they're digging a bigger hole every day.
How she's handled some of the hate, how she's handled some of this criticism, where I'm not even sure where some of this is coming from, but how she's handled it has been so classy. And I think as a parent of 2 young girls, I appreciate that. The girls know exactly who Caitlin Clark is. They don't know any other WNBA player, but they know exactly who Caitlin Clark is. And so if that is someone for my girls to idolize, and my girls to look up to, then absolutely, I want that to be the case, because that's how you handle some of this unnecessary criticism that's come. I mean, she could give a lot of ag PR firms a lesson on how to handle some of the criticism and some of the PR, because she just takes the higher road every single time.
Yeah, and just like do the job. I'm just here to do a job and play, and I just love to play.
She loves the game.
That's it. I don't need to get into all the other stuff.
She loves the game.
Should it be much of a surprise though? She's from Iowa.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, now is Iowa showing? Iowa's showing.
But middle America, right?
Right.
We're hardworking
people.
We just go to work.
Yep.
Get the job done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next day, go to work again. Get
Absolutely.
the job done, and that's what she does.
Very good. Well, I feel like maybe we should let Brian get to work.
We do need to. But Brian, before we go, each year there's like, oh, we really want to know what's coming out of this state, what's coming out of that state. In your opinion, what state are you really looking forward to the most to seeing what results come out of Pro Farmer Crop Tour next week?
So Illinois, obviously, we talked about the 225. I think that one is probably the most important, because that 225, with Illinois being such a major producing state, is a large reason behind the 183.1. And so that one, in my opinion, is number one. But there, I'll lump Indiana and Iowa and Nebraska and South Dakota in there as well, because record yields are also forecast in those 4 states.
Brian, I'll never forget a farmer along the route on Crop Tour quite a few years ago told me in Illinois, I said, my gosh, how do you guys, and it was McLean County, known for growing corn. I said, how do you guys produce these phenomenal yields year after year? And he looked at me with the straightest face and said, tell me, this is where Jesus left his sandals. And it was so funny because, the soil is that good. It is like where Jesus left his sandals. The soil is amazing, and they produce some amazing yields. It will be interesting to see what Crop Tour comes up with next week.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll be watching. Of course, we'll be doing our live talkbacks every evening, Monday through Thursday. Brian, I'm not sure if we're having fireworks on Monday night, but I think we should expect it, because it seems like every year we have fireworks right in the middle of this live.
Yes, the Notre Dame moving in? Is that moving?
Yeah, it's always moving night, and then they have fireworks that night. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know any other college that does fireworks the first night. So my summary of that is Notre Dame has too much money.
Well,
they got plenty of money. That's for sure.
It ain't free. That's for sure.
Okay, what time? But everyone can tune in to watch the night, even if you can't come to the in-person nightly meetings. Yes. I'll be on the East with Brian. Michelle Rook will be on the West with Chip Flory. So if you can come to a nightly meeting, those are really informative, because that's some of the what the Sigma and talking tea and some of that doesn't end up on the broadcast. We do that every night. So I love that. But if you can't come in person, you can tune in on agweb.com every night. What time is the live broadcast, Clinton?
I believe it's 8 Central. Isn't that right?
Is it 8 Central?
It's 8 Central. And so we'll start a little before 8.
Okay.
And then once we get to 8, we bring those numbers out. We talk about kind of what each side found for the day.
Yep.
And then we'll let Brian and Chip talk a little bit, and then we'll get back to the meeting site. So, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. If you've got time in the evening, jump over. agweb.com is where we're going to have the live event. So you can just click on there.
Very informative. And I will say that is the one good thing that came out of COVID for
Oh,
Crop Tour.
absolutely.
Is
Yeah.
we do these live broadcasts every night, 10, 15 minutes, and you can really get a taste for what Scouts saw. And Brian and Chip join Clinton every night. So it's really interesting. All right, Brian, we appreciate you. I know you're busy getting ready for Crop Tour. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. Tyne, that's a good one. I know we waited a couple weeks to get it, the band back together here and fire this bad boy back up, but it was a good one.
Yep, I'll be on Crop Tour next week. I know you're putting in the hours there in South Bend with the live broad, getting everything ready, putting in a long day of work anyway, and then getting ready for the live broadcast. But looking forward to Crop Tour next week. Looking forward to being on Crop Tour.
Yeah, it's just always so interesting.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of one of those things where we don't do a lot of live stuff.
No.
It's kind of one of those things to do something live and really talk it out and have some viewers and just really break it all down. It's kind of fun. It's just a fun week.
It is
It's
long
exhausting,
days.
but fun.
We don't get a lot of sleep. Apparently, we found out Brian does not require a lot of sleep.
Right.
I do. So that is the one thing that I do not enjoy is the shorter nights. Apparently, Brian thrives on that. He doesn't require a lot of sleep every night. I don't think Chip does either. They are machines, and so they're going to be on their A game all week.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Well, I appreciate you as always, and I appreciate our viewers for watching us here on Unscripted.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. You can dive into more of Unscripted on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and listen to it anywhere podcasts are found. I'm Clinton Griffiths.
And I'm Tyne Morgan. From all of us here at Farm Journal, keep it real as you live your life unscripted.
Unscripted is a production of Farm Journal Studios, where no one grows alone.
Thanks for